All righty. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be back. You know the drill. We're going to go on mute for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll be right back. All righty. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly DSS break. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm live here every Thursday to talk about data science experiences and best practices with leading data professionals in a 15-minute break. I'm Anna Annison, CEO and founder of Formulated by, home of the Data Science Salon, and I'm streaming here from our HQ, which is located here in Miami, right next to the Design District. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Alan Fetter, Principal Data Scientist at Invesco, an independent investment management firm dedicated to delivering an investment experience that helps people get more out of life. And Alan is presenting on the virtual track of our upcoming DSS hybrid event, Miami. And that's going to be on February 16th. And today he's going to be giving us a little sneak peek of his talk. And also he's going to talk a little bit about his background and how NLP is being used in finance to help professionals do their jobs more efficiently and effectively. Welcome, Alan. I'm really happy to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining us for the break.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Just to introduce myself again, my name is Alan Fader. I'm a principal data scientist at Invesco. Before I joined Invesco, I worked at AIG on their science group, and in a previous life, I was an actuary at Swiss Re. I currently live in Maryland with my wife and 2 children, and I'm really excited to talk to you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. I know that you've worked in data science for some really large financial institutions like AIG and Swiss Re. What do you find particularly interesting about this space? I mean, I know there's a lot of data, but maybe you could talk a little bit about some things that make you the most excited about your space.
So obviously, one of the things that is most exciting is that there's a lot of data. Kind of selfishly, we don't necessarily have to do quite as much of the raw data gathering. Compared to certain other industries, it's already very data heavy. Sometimes it's generated internally. Sometimes somebody else has already purchased it for their own use. That doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with messy data. We don't have to deal with missing data. We don't have data errors. We certainly have all of those. But much of the infrastructure needed to deal with them is already there. The other thing is that a lot of people, because it's a relatively data knowledgeable industry, many of the people we work with aren't scared of data. This isn't something that's foreign to them. They know a lot of the ideas, the terms. They may be working with it themselves in a different way. So some of the first steps, which might be the hardest, aren't there. And it really speeds both the time from when we can start working on a project, but also once we come up with something, it speeds the time to implementation as well.
Cool. No, that's definitely a good point, because I feel like finance industry was one of the first industries to really apply, right?
Yeah.
Data science, and then it kind of transferred into other areas, and which is really cool.
And it's great because it has so many other data professionals anyway. When I was in insurance, I worked with a lot of actuaries. Like I had been now there's a lot of quants. So there's a lot of people we can talk to who have data and mathematical and statistical background coming from somewhere slightly different. So it really allows us to combine and get to something better than either of us could maybe get to on our own.
Yeah, no, that's really neat. And I think to kind of go off that is, how do you think finance industry is benefiting from machine learning, and specifically natural language processing, or NLP?
So I think there's I kind of think about it in 2 separate groups. The first one is, whenever I tell somebody that I work within machine learning in finance, people's mind immediately jump to thinking about how am I creating predictive signals to see whether a given stock is going to go up, whether bond or some type of security or the market as a whole is going to go up or down. A lot of people automatically think that I'm doing some type of automatic trading. Obviously, that happens a lot. I've been involved with some of that. In some ways, that's obviously sort of the most important, the most critical, the thing that excites everyone the most. Machine learning, in some ways, has been there for a while, especially, I know sometimes the definition between machine learning and statistics can get a little bit fuzzy. I grew up in statistics, but so that's really been there for a while. That's somewhere where NLP is definitely entering. A lot of people are doing things related to some type of sentiment analysis, just to use one example. I'm actually particularly get excited, especially recently, about some of the ways that the finance industry can integrate machine learning, artificial intelligence, natural language processing with the specialized skills that have already been developed by the investment professionals, such as fund managers or traders or analysts that have been there already. They have a lot of stuff. They're not necessarily just going to jump to using your machine learning generated signal, either because they don't trust it or because it's just not useful for the way that they're doing their job. I actually get really excited about thinking, how can we use some of these methodologies and tools to basically supercharge what they're doing already? They've got skills. For example, we've been using NLP sometime, or we can be using NLP to maybe highlight certain texts. Maybe a given fund manager is trying to do research into a company or trying to do research into a new field. They can use NLP to highlight news, filings that are relevant to the specific thing they're looking in. So we're not creating a signal necessarily, but we can use NLP to make them do their job more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you think this is all going to kind of evolve and change in the next couple of years?
I think it's definitely changing. I mean, in one simple way, it's definitely going to continue expanding its use. It's expanded its use from specifically from machine learning side over the past 3 to 5 years. And I think it's going to go even more. I get really excited by some of the changes in natural language processing in particular. There's been a big change starting from maybe some of the academic research labs, either at universities or at the big tech companies like Google and Facebook, using transformer-based models.
Yeah,
For people who know deep learning,
Mhm.
for a while, people have been using things like recurrent neural networks, but there's been a real explosion using transformer-based models such as BERT was sort of one of the
Yep.
big ones that exploded early. And there's been actually a number of ways in which it's a lot easier to use than it even was a few years ago. I personally like using Hugging Face's tools. Hugging Face is a small startup that really is dedicated to expanding the use of NLP. Running their code, their open source code, is really easy. It's like the difference of trying to, if somebody knows other areas of machine learning, trying to run a random forest on your own versus using scikit-learn. Now using Hugging Face's tools, it's a lot easier to run things quickly without having to know so much nitty-gritty in PyTorch. I think use of tools like Hugging Face's Transformers package will allow people in finance to use it, implement it into production. They also have a lot of, for example, integrations with AWS SageMaker. So the ability to take some of these tools, which currently over the past 2 years are only just things that some academics are coming up with, and being able to implement them has really been expanded. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, everyone's going to be using it, or most people are going to be using it in those ways.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's cool that you say that. We actually work with John Snow Labs.
Okay, cool.
Who, do NLP.
We do a lot of that great stuff too.
So you
And
mentioned
actually,
Hugging Face.
No, and I think kind of being able to use this more easily will mean that traditional finance professionals will end up touching this, even if they're not, I don't know, high frequency traders or something.
Yeah, that is really cool for sure. And I think being, you being an expert of leading data science teams, and I'm sure you've done that many different times. What do you think today are the main skills that data scientists should have to succeed in their careers? It sounds like probably using or knowing, being familiar with these tools is probably one of those skills, right?
Yeah, so certainly knowing these tools, honestly, knowing any of the tools, if you're good at one area, if let's say you find yourself strong at, I don't know, having used scikit-learn or other types of tools, you will probably not need, you will probably be good at switching to another area. Obviously, you might take a few weeks or even a couple of months, but you should feel confident that once you've sort of mastered one area, if you get really excited about NLP, you should feel confident that you can switch. You don't need to start from the ground up. There's a lot of shared knowledge, even if not shared code base. There's a lot of similarities. So knowing one area of machine learning will help you. That doesn't mean you can use it tomorrow, but it means that if you put in the effort, you should feel confident that you can get there. Ultimately, I think there's other kind of shared skills. Really some of the skills that underlie any data professional's job. One of the things that I've noticed that I've seen people, sometimes even myself, fall on is just making sure to always be skeptical and critical of the data. That becomes doubly important when you work with something like NLP. You should always try to understand the data lineage. How did the data get from wherever it was created to you? It's not great to just trust it and assume that it's perfect. What kind of biases and flaws may have entered it at different steps? You should always look at the raw data, kind of try to figure out, has this been curated at all? Find the data errors before the data errors come back and bite you later on. I always think about data scientists in some type of their schooling, especially in a lot of the boot camps, focus a lot on splitting data into train test splits. Obviously, that's critical, but it's also important to think about because ultimately you don't care about this data you have. You don't need to predict on that. You know the right answers. You care about the data that's coming into the future. So make sure that data is actually representative of the data that you have now. If they're different, you might need to think about making changes. And sort of the last thing I want to say, a lot of people talk about how important it is for data scientists to communicate well with stakeholders. And that's obviously important. And people talk about how you present. I think sort of in some ways even more important is how you listen to your business partners. They're relying on you to translate their goals into a data science output. So make sure to actually listen to them and understand not only what they're asking for, but why they want it. Understanding why they want it can really affect and change some of your data science methods. So it's not just about, hey, convincing them at the end that you did a good job. It's making sure you do the good job in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing I think you have all those skills too. I could tell that you're a great presenter and listener. So, but I think that I don't think every data scientist has that. So I think having more mentors like you to help people get those skills is, a great thing. So, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And the last question I have, I know that you're going to be speaking on February 16th about NLP and finance beyond predicting alpha. And maybe you could talk just a little bit about what people can expect without giving away too much of your presentation.
So I mentioned earlier sort of my two classes of NLP and machine learning problems within finance, sort of the alpha prediction, the price prediction, and then the ways that we can be integrating NLP to help people. I'm going to be focusing on the second, partly because I think I've heard more talks about the first one. So I'm going to be kind of focusing on 3 or 4 applications of NLP that can be used to help finance professionals improve their research and decision-making capabilities. And in that talk, I'm going to be basically saying what I think the goal of a given application would be. And I'm going to be kind of mentioning some of the specific tools and packages, as well as some of the a quick look at some of the underlying math or algorithms that make them work.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited about your talk, and I hope that you all can join us for DSS Hybrid Miami. And we've dropped the link to register right there in the comments. It is actually a free event for everybody. And we actually have a small gathering happening on February 17th as well. So if you're in Miami, ping us about that. And thank you so much for joining us today, Alan, and for providing such a very great overview of NLP and just finance space and the use of data science in general. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me. For anybody listening, if you want to contact me, you can feel free to message me on LinkedIn or direct message me on Twitter. My handle is just at my name, at Alan Fader.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Alan. And all of you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.
You too.